The fourth criminal case involving Donald Trump is likely to come to a head next week, with the district attorney in Atlanta, Fani Willis, expected to take the findings from her election interference investigation to a grand jury. The Georgia investigation may be the most expansive legal challenge yet to the efforts that Donald Trump and his advisors undertook to keep him in power after he lost the 2020 election. Nearly 20 people were known to have been told that they could face charges as a result of the investigation, which Willis, the district attorney in Fulton County, has pursued now for 2.5 years. Well, a judge in Los Angeles today sentenced the Canadian musician Tory Lanez to 10 years in prison for shooting the rapper Megan Thee Stallion during an argument in 2020. This is the culmination of a case that polarized the music world, filled gossip pages, and generated deeper discussion about violence against Black women. Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida is shaking up his presidential campaign again. For the third time in less than 1 month, DeSantis' campaign announced a major restructuring, this time removing his embattled campaign manager, Generra Peck, and replacing her with the loyalist from the governor's office as he continues to search for a campaign team and a political message that can compete with Donald Trump's. The Supreme Court today temporarily revived the Biden administration's regulation of ghost guns, kits that can be bought online and assembled into untraceable homemade firearms. The court's brief order gave no reasons, which is typical when the justices act on emergency applications. The order is provisional, leaving the regulation in place while a challenge moves forward in the courts. Authorities in Montgomery, Alabama, charged 3 white men with third-degree assault after they attacked a Black riverboat co-captain at the city's riverfront park over the weekend and ignited a brawl largely along racial lines. The violent scene, captured on video by bystanders, has stoked memories of the city's racist history. Authorities said that they have consulted with the FBI and, at this time, will not be charging the men with a hate crime or inciting a riot. President Biden will designate nearly 1 million acres of land near the Grand Canyon as a new national monument on today, to protect the area from uranium mining. This is according to Biden administration officials. Native tribes and environmental groups have long lobbied for the government to permanently protect the area around the Grand Canyon from uranium mining, which they say would damage the Colorado River watershed, as well as areas with great cultural meaning for Native Americans. Ohio voters today will decide whether to make it harder to amend the state constitution in a special election that has tremendous implications for the fate of abortion rights in the state. Now, for more than a century, Ohio voters have been able to amend the state constitution with a simple majority. The measure today, backed by Republicans, requires that an amendment to the state constitution would have to have a threshold vote of 60%. Well, conservative media stars and personalities, including, of course, Donald Trump, are celebrating, but not because the U.S. women's national soccer team won, but because the U.S. women's national soccer team lost to Sweden in the round of 16 yesterday, or on Sunday. In a post on Truth Social, Trump said the U.S.'s team lost to Sweden, quote, is fully emblematic of what is happening to our once, and that's his English, not mine, a great nation under crooked Joe Biden, end of quote. He goes on to say, many of our players were openly hostile to America. No other country behaved in such a manner or even close, he continued. And he put in big, bold letters, all caps, woke equals failure. He goes on to say, nice shot, Megan. The USA is going to hell. Yes, that is what Donald Trump, who's running for president, said about the country that he wants to be president of. We are going to hell. Well, you are listening and watching Areva Martin in real time. We're going to tackle that one. And I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. In this hour, I have two rock stars joining me, Dr. Larry Walker. He's a professor at the University of Central Florida, and Dr. Calvin John Smiley. He is a professor in New York. He's also the author of Purgatory, Citizenship, Reentry, Race, and Abolition. And in hour two, that's the hour where we go deep and we get behind the headlines. We go behind the headlines on some of the biggest stories of the day. And some of these stories make big headlines. Others have big impact. Well, today, the biggest story in the news that also has enormous impact is the story of this gang attack on Damian Pickett, the African-American dock worker, co-captain of the boat called Harriet, that was attacked while doing his job on a dock in Montgomery, Alabama on Sunday. I know all of you that are listening and watching have seen the video of that attack because it went viral instantly. And not only one, but multiple videos have been spread over the last 48 hours. So we're going to be investigating in hour two, talking more about that attack, asking, was it racially motivated for those white men to jump off their boat and to attack Mr. Pickett? Going to ask, how should a city respond when there is this kind of crime committed in broad daylight and a crime that has racial implications? And we're going to talk to an attorney about the potential charges. We heard the law enforcement agency in Montgomery talk about the charges that have been leveled, but might there be additional charges, including more serious charges like hate crime charges? So I have a criminal defense attorney and the mayor of Kansas City, Missouri, who has had to deal with a very similar racially charged crime committed in his city in April of this year. Both of them are going to help us make sense of that attack on the dock in Montgomery, Alabama. But before I bring them on, here's what I'm thinking in real time. Again, the videos of this attack have gone viral. The memes will have you laughing and crying at the same time. And my good friend and journalist, Tory, who writes a column for The Griot, he is the host of multiple podcasts. He wrote what I believe to be one of the best opinion pieces to date on this Alabama gang attack. And I've been reading lots of news about this gang attack. I've been talking about it myself on TV. So when I read Touré's piece, I was just really, it resonated with me in a way that some of the other articles had not. In fact, the article is so good, in addition to you Googling it to make sure you read it, I'm going to read some of the salient points because this opinion piece made me laugh and also at times made me want to cry. The title of the piece is Why the Montgomery Riverfront Uprising is Making Black People So Damn Happy. And the subtitle is Black People Came to the Defense of a Black Man Being Beaten by a White Mob. What's not to like? So Touré goes on and he writes, the joy that Black people across the country are feeling over the Montgomery River Uprising, aka the Alabama Sweet Tea Party, is filling my soul. We are celebrating this beatdown like we all just got reparations, and I'm so here for it. I'm so happy that I want to drill down on what exactly is making us so happy at this moment. Let's explore. For one thing, we see the sense of collective responsibility in action. In these videos, we see Black people having one another's backs. We see brotherhood and sisterhood. We see the vibe of, no, y'all ain't piling on my brother. We fight back. Black people showed up in droves to defend our brother, and it was heartwarming to see us show up for us like that. It gives us strength to know that maybe one day, if some white boys jump you, the cavalry will come running to save you too. Because whatever power we have in this country comes from us standing together. There are also footnotes that add critical context. Nicole Hannah-Jones tweeted, If you understand the history of Montgomery, one of the most prolific slave trading cities in the U.S., turned brutally repressed apartheid regime after, it gives so much more perspective to this video. Trust. Now, Toray goes on, that's a town where there was a robust slave trade, and the riverfront was a space where they used to sell enslaved people. Right at that very spot, Black people rose up to strike some sense into the local whites. Were the ancestors there watching and smiling? You best believe they were. Did that beat down smudge the space? No doubt. This is also a moment when many of us learned that the folding chair was invented by a Black man named Nathaniel Alexander. That adds poetic justice to the sight of a Black man putting a folding chair on the heads of some racist white people. Also, in a world where we're supposedly unable to swim, there's a 16-year-old brother swimming in to join the fight. Some have nicknamed him Aquaman. Some have called him Jermichael Phelps or Michael B. Phelps or Dark Spitz, like Mark Spitz, who won Olympic gold in the 70s. My friend said the swimmer gets us to the moment when Nuck If You Buck and Wade in the Water intersect with FAFO. My man said the new national anthem is Lift Every Chair and Swing. I'm dead. Okay. Those are excerpts from Toray's really powerful and informative and sometimes funny piece on the Montgomery Riverfront uprising. Make sure you check it out. It's on the Griot site. It gives us the history of Montgomery. It gives us all the memes. It gives us everything about that uprising, which again, as I said, some of it is so funny, but others really it's sickening. And watching those videos make you want to cry. I don't know what you thought about it. We're going to get into that on the show today and go deep on the Montgomery uprising in hour 2. So stick around. When we come forward, more of today's trending news with my expert contributors right here on KBLA Talk 1580.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar,
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
Bounce is back.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head. Yeah.
This is a rather bold pronouncement, but we think we can back it up. If you come across a radio frequency anywhere putting more variety and more diversity on the air than KBLA Talk 1580, we sure would like to hear about your discovery.
You got to have vision.
You can search, but we are confident that you won't find more shows covering more topics, hosted by a more diverse and inclusive lineup of talkers than the squad we have assembled here at KBLA Talk 1580.
This is the time, brothers. This is the time.
We've got something for everybody.
That's right.
Health and healing, history and humor, issues and events, empowerment and entertainment, all in one station.
What's really going on?
Free enterprise, you dig?
KBLA Talk 1580.
Yes.
Oh yeah. We got a lot to talk about.
King Kong ain't got on me.
If you're not listening to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings on KBLA Talk 1580, you're missing out. Everybody wants to talk to Tavis.
That's one reason, by the way, why I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you today. The 3 people I always most hoped would interview me were Phil Donahue, Studs Terkel, and Tavis Smiley. Donahue's retired, Terkel's deceased, so this is a real thrill for me. And the reason why I have such respect for what you do is you have a historically informed conversation of depth and detail.
Be sure to tune in to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings, 9 a.m. to 12 noon on your unapologetically progressive radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is the
than the sword.
They say the pen is mightier than the sword. At KBLA Talk 1580, we not only have a lot to talk about, we have a lot to write about. Politics, relationships, business, empowerment, and culture. The all-star roster at KBLA Talk 1580 has you covered.
That's what it's all about.
Be sure to follow us on all our socials for our latest book releases, op-eds, essays, and commentaries from our hosts. And, of course, download the KBLA 1580 app as we strive to remain your most trusted, credible, and reliable source for the issues you care about. This is Unapologetic.
We are back and we are tracking all of today's trending news with my expert contributors, Dr. Larry Walker and Dr. Calvin John Smiley. Okay, Dr. Walker, I got a Florida question for you. Help us understand what is happening with Ron DeSantis. 3 major changes to his campaign team in less than 1 month. Many of his big billionaire donors saying they're going to, sit on the sideline and see if he can pull it together. This candidate, this Floridian governor that was supposed to be the big challenger to Donald Trump and was supposed to be a shoo-in for the Republican nomination, is really struggling. And so much so that I saw an article that he's using his small children now as a way to gain the attention of the MAGA base. What do you make of the country's apparent rejection of the DeSantis way, and also DeSantis' seemingly inability to run a campaign?
Yeah, I think the first thing to keep in mind is that Donald Trump essentially acting as an incumbent. I know he lost the last election, but when he's already been elected, so he's already a well-known political candidate, so to speak. But I think there are multiple challenges with Ron DeSantis. First of all, he went as far right as you can possibly go. I don't think if he went any far right, he would fall off the table in terms of some of the issues we're dealing with here down here in the state of Florida, which we all know. But I think the challenge for him is personality. He just hasn't come across as warm. I just saw a video of him responding to something, this kind of bizarre laugh, and then he paused and then smiled again. He's just not coming off. And I think coming off well. And look, I worked on a number of political campaigns. I think the other challenge for him is that he's in the fishbowl, right? So from what I've seen, the press down here really don't press him on important issues. And when he does, he just kind of dismisses them. But he hasn't been tested. And I know he spent 6 years in Congress, but he hasn't been tested on a national level like he's getting tested now. I think the other critical thing about his campaign is that he wasn't doing any mainstream media. Remember, he wasn't doing any of the mainstream media, and then they had the reboot, and now he's on, CNN and some of these other places discussing, talking to reporters. But honestly, he's dead in the water. And I never believed, in my opinion, he was going to win a nomination in the first place.
Okay, and all that you're saying, I think everybody would agree with it, but I think the part that's a little puzzling is the campaign chaos, because he is someone, as you said, that spent 6 years in Congress. So he has been able to lead and assemble a congressional, a team that got him elected to Congress. And he's had 2 successful campaigns in Florida for governor. And the last one, he won by over 20 points. So apparently, look at this guy and say he knows how to put together a campaign team that can get him across the finish line. Why do you think all the missteps with even just the team itself? I mean, that's separate and apart from the message that the team comes up with and how he comes off in terms of his retail politics. But just like, we're talking HR 101 here with this, constant revolving door with his staff.
He's just not made for prime time. He doesn't have the personality. And look, you're right. Like I said, he spent 6 years working in Congress, and now Florida's the 3rd most populous state in the country. So we have to highlight that. But Florida is different. And you and I have been on the show a number of times, and we've joked about it. But it is its own petri dish, so to speak, political petri dish. And he's having chaos in his, with his campaign staff. It's because he hired a bunch of folks who are focused on what's going on online, but not, to issues at the dinner table. So he can't really talk to you about how he's going to respond to inflation. Remember, he had that gaffe about Ukraine and Russia several weeks ago. He's just not built for this. And to use non-academic vernacular, he's not built for it.
Okay. Well, as you said, that Florida is its own kind of petri dish. I'm thinking, we have this concept of Florida perhaps being a little bit more cosmopolitan and sophisticated than it is. And maybe what you're saying is Florida's big, but it's like a big old country town because, maybe the team, as you said, they're not playing well. They're not ready for the glare of the national news media and some of the, the things that come along with being on the national stage, very different than being on the local stage when you have reporters that he can easily dismiss. But clearly disappointing to big donors, disappointing, I think, to those Republicans that wanted to see a major challenger to Donald Trump. Clearly, election's not over. There's time to, get his act together. But so far, just about every report coming out of his camp is negative. Let me ask you, Dr. Smiley, let's switch gears for a minute. 10 years for shooting Megan in the foot and then humiliating her online, the Tory Lanez shooting of Megan, and now the 10-year sentence that he got. We know how the shooting itself divided many in the rap community, many in the Black community. Folks were saying, oh, Megan, don't send another Black man to jail, blah, blah, blah. She suffered a lot of emotional trauma after coming forward and telling the truth about what happened because she was vilified online. How do you think this 10-year sentence handed down today will impact this ongoing debate that's been happening in the Black community about Black women and violence against Black women, rappers? It just opens up so many questions.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to, you're going to have your camps. I think what we'll see on Twitter and other social media spaces is that people will double down on what they were previously saying, that, Black men are just being sent to prison, and we'll get the kind of, if he was white, this wouldn't happen, or, people who are going to support Megan Thee Stallion are going to support her. I'll say this, I think as Americans, we're very desensitized to prison sentences because we often hand them out like candy, right? You'll hear people getting life or 100 years or something like that. As someone who works with folks incarcerated, 10 years is a long time. I always tell folks, think about what you were doing 10 years ago or where you were in life 10 years ago, and then kind of do that fast forward to where you are today. So, this is a stiff penalty, particularly in comparison to other industrialized nations that we compare ourselves to in Western Europe and things like that. It's an unfortunate situation all the way around. And I think it very much highlights that people should not have guns, in spaces, especially when there's alcohol involved, when there's sexual intimacies involved, because everyone really loses. I don't think that there's really a winner at the end of this, even with Tory getting the 10 years. As you just stated, Meg Thee Stallion still has to deal with the emotional trauma that incident brought to her, as well as all of the kind of verbal assaults that she'll probably hear for, probably the remainder of her life on Twitter or even at concerts or in public arenas where people will say something snarky or nasty. And then, Tory Lanez, even though he's the offender here, there is going to be collateral consequences to that. His family, his fan base, his thing. And again, I'm not trying to do it's the same or not, but I'm just saying the totality is that I don't know if there's...
I don't know, Dr. Smiley, you sounded a whole lot like somehow he should be given the same level of empathy that the victim of the crime should be given.
No, not at all that he should be getting the same level of empathy as Meg Thee Stallion, but that I think that we often think about cases as there's a winner and a loser. And what I'm saying is that I think there's more losers than winners in this because of the violence that he did to Meg Thee Stallion. So, it's a shame all the way around.
Yeah. Okay. I hear you. Let me ask you this, Dr. Walker. Is there a tendency in the Black community to go easy on Black men when they perpetrate violence against Black women? Is there this notion that Black women, we should feel and understand, how the Black man has been treated in America, and, because of that, we should not hold them, Black men, accountable when they engage in violence against us as Black women?
Well, the first point I want to make is intimate partner violence is people who are guilty should be prosecuted. And I served on a board for an organization that supported women who dealt with intimate partner violence. So I want to highlight that first. I think the other thing as it relates to criminalization of Black men in the judicial system is kind of what you alluded to when Black folks are having this conversation. That's really what they're talking about, but they don't have nothing to provide context, right? So they just say, oh, the Black man, we're always going after the Black man, but they can't articulate that, hey, Black men for years have been, and prosecuted and put in jail. And we see that every week about someone being released after 10, 15, 20 years. There's no question that happens, but we have to acknowledge in this particular case that, and as it relates to intimate partner violence, that he shot her and that he was sentenced and he should go to jail. And so we do need to have a broader conversation, not only in hip hop, but in the Black community about intimate partner violence, but also recognizing that the judicial system does not work for Black folks.
Yeah, and I think we can do both, right? We can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can acknowledge that this system is disproportionately, is stacked in a way that it negatively impacts Black folks, men and women, in a disproportionate way. But in this very imperfect system, there are consequences, despite your color, when you are engaged in, as you call it, this intimate partner violence. And I think what makes this case so horrific is the use of the gun, obviously, to shoot her, but the conduct afterwards, the efforts to intimidate her, to humiliate her, to silence her, to come up with this whole story about, how he didn't do it, to use a song to publicly try to intimidate her. I don't know what I feel about the 10 years. I'm like you, Professor Smiley. 10 years strikes me as a long time for this, and I'm not in favor of these, long prison sentence for anyone, particularly not Black men, knowing that we are over prosecuted and over sentenced. But with that being said, I'm also not in favor of causing Black women to be silenced just because the violence against them is perpetrated by someone Black versus someone white. Because if we are in relationships with Black men, and the majority of us as Black women are, intimate partner violence is going to be at the hands of a Black person. This is a deep conversation. We're going to take some news and sports, and when we come forward, we're going to continue this conversation because it brings up so many issues that impact so many people in our community. Stay with us. KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader. KBLA Talk 1580. Follow the leader. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at KBLA 1580. Follow the leader.
Are you ready?
The station leading the way with exclusive interviews,
Follow the leader.
stimulating conversation, and intellectual discourse that empowers, enlightens, and informs.
Follow the leader.
Follow the leader at KBLA 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Keep following the leader.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
The bounce is back.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show, weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head. Yeah.
This is a rather bold pronouncement, but we think we can back it up. If you come across a radio frequency anywhere putting more variety and more diversity on the air than KBLA Talk 1580, we sure would like to hear about your discovery.
You got to have vision.
You can search. We are confident that you won't find more shows covering more topics, hosted by a more diverse and inclusive lineup of talkers than the squad we have assembled here at KBLA Talk 1580.
This is the time, brothers. This is the time.
We've got something for everybody.
That's right.
Health and healing, history and humor, issues and events, empowerment and entertainment, all in one station.
What's really going on?
Free enterprise, you dig?
KBLA Talk 1580.
Yes.
Oh yeah. We got a lot to talk about.
King Kong ain't got on me.
listening to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings on KBLA Talk 1580. You're missing out. Everybody wants to talk to Tavis.
That's one reason, by the way, why I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you today. The three people I always most hoped would interview me were Phil Donahue, Studs Terkel, and Tavis Smiley. Donahue's retired, Terkel's deceased, so this is a real thrill for me. And the reason why I have such respect for what you do is you have a historically informed conversation of depth and detail.
Be sure to tune in to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings, 9 a.m. to 12 noon on your unapologetically progressive radio station, KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580.
Is the pen mightier than the sword?
They say the pen is mightier than the sword. At KBLA Talk 1580, we not only have a lot to talk about, we have a lot to write about. Politics, relationships, business, empowerment, and culture. The all-star roster at KBLA Talk 1580 has you covered.
That's what it's all about.
Be sure to follow us on all our socials for our latest book releases, op-eds, essays, and commentaries from our hosts. And, of course, download the KBLA 1580 app as we strive to remain your most trusted, credible, and reliable source for the issues you care about. This is unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
What up, baby?
I'm young, gifted, and black.
KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
Hey there, I'm Jared Hill, president of the National Association of Black Journalists of Los Angeles, and I just want to say thank you for the benevolent $10,000 donation and scholarships for the next generation of black journalists.
And I'm Haywood Galbraith, photojournalist and founder of the Minority Photojournalism Institute. Thanks, KBLA, for your generous $10,000 scholarship gift to help us train the next generation of black photojournalists.
Congratulations to all the students who will benefit from the scholarship dollars raised at our Black History Month luncheon honoring black legends in LA media. When we come forward at KBLA Talk 1580, we're bringing everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us.
Access granted.
In a survey conducted by the public opinion research firm Eviderus, KBLA Talk 1580 consistently emerged as the station of choice for black audiences in the Los Angeles media market and beyond. The survey also revealed that the vast majority of black audiences are concerned about the lack of black-owned media and are more likely to listen to talk radio that focuses on issues that impact the black community. For some reason, the other talk stations haven't quite figured that out.
If you think about KFI, well, KFI only has like a 3% black listenership. 3%. So there's a good 97% out there to support a station like KBLA.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black. Your black. Your black.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram at KBLA 1580.
Follow the leader.
Are you ready?
The station leading the way with exclusive interviews,
Follow the leader.
stimulating conversation, and intellectual discourse that empowers, enlightens, and informs.
Follow the leader.
Follow the leader at KBLA 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Keep following the leader.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rap.
We are back and we are tracking today's trending news with my expert contributors, Dr. Larry Walker and Dr. Calvin John Smiley. And in hour two, we're going to go all in on that beatdown that happened on the dock in Montgomery, Alabama. We're going to talk about the legal charges that have been filed and potentially may be filed, and going to talk about how a city with a black mayor responds to this kind of racially charged violence. So make sure you stick around for hour two. We are talking now about the sentencing that happened today in a Los Angeles Superior Court in the criminal case of Tory Lanez. He was convicted in December of 3 felony counts. He had assault with a semi-automatic handgun, carrying a loaded unregistered firearm in a vehicle, and discharging that firearm with gross negligence. This sentencing hearing took a long time. The judge took into account aggravating factors as well as mitigating factors. Tony faced a maximum of 22 years and 18 months in prison. The prosecution was asking for about 14 years. He gets 10 years. His lawyers, though, argued for only probation, raising mitigating factors, including the abuse they say he suffered it as a child and the use of alcohol that they say was related to this incident. So back to you, Dr. Smiley. In this sentencing hearing, Megan wrote a statement, and here's what she said. She said, Mr. Lance tried to position himself as a victim and set out to destroy my character and my soul. He lied to anyone that would listen and paid bloggers to disseminate false information about the case on social media. He released music videos and songs to damage my character and continue his crusade. She said he had privately apologized for the shooting, offering her and her friend $1 million each to keep quiet. Now, to counter that statement, I think there are about 76 letters written in support of Tony by various people, including letters about him as a father, the philanthropic work that he has done. This case and the sentencing is going to continue to be the talk on the blog sites, amongst the rap and hip hop artist community. But I think the domestic violence part of this that Dr. Walker brought up is so important. How do we, as a Black community, deal with this? I think everybody agrees we need prison reform, we need criminal justice reform, we need sentencing reform, but we also, got to deal with folks that engage in this kind of violent criminal conduct.
Yeah, so let me say a couple things, then respond to that. One, I actually think in this conversation, when we're going to hear people say, the system is treating Black men wrong or putting a Black man down, this actually was in his favor, right? Because he could have gotten 22 years. And if he was just probably Tory Lanez, the janitor, he probably would have gotten 22 years. But the fact that he is a hip hop star and things like that probably worked in his favor to get the reduced time. The second thing I wanted to say is that Tory Lanez also had a kind of a history of being the bad boy in the industry. I remember years ago, there was a video of him, stepping up to New York City rapper Joey Badass and threatening him. He had been involved in other altercations. I think he punched August Alsina in the face for something. So clearly Tory Lanez has an issue with his own violence, his own, anger issues, whatever he needs to work on that, whether that's now in prison or whatever. So he needs to do that. To answer your question directly, I think it goes into the point around that we need prison reform, criminal justice reform, and sentencing reform, is that the system, as you said, as imperfect as it is, it also doesn't really make space to have those kind of deeper, more critical, and really tough, scary, uncomfortable conversations about what domestic violence is. What essentially happens in our system is that something happens and the state comes in, which we all want it to in some degree, but at some level, it now devoids the fact that that conversation probably can't happen, or at least it can't happen for a while now. It would be amazing that at some point down the road, if Megan, if Tory, if other facilitators could sit in a room, could have that kind of restorative conversation, he could apologize. And I don't mean apologize to reduce his sentence. I'm talking like a genuine apology, a genuine amends. What else does that look like? That's where I think we can really kind of run wild with it. Does that mean some kind of financial compensation to Megan, to other women and other folks of domestic violence? But I think that's where we have to go, is that we have to kind of, and I don't want to curse on the radio, but we have to kind of sit in our, in our poop and have those kind of stinky conversations, because it's uncomfortable. We're not going to get there if all we do is say, well, now he goes to jail for 10 years. And when he gets out, will he be a rapper again? And she needs to just move on and be the international icon of a hip hop artist herself. There has to be that kind of resolving of that tension.
Yeah, one of the things that Mr. Lanez said to the judge following the hearing, this is a quote, "Please don't ruin my life. I could be your son. I could be your brother." Now, Dr. Walker, the prosecution, in saying why they recommended the 14 years, said that he had not shown any remorse. That's a big part of sentencing in our judicial system. You come in, you express remorse, and you ask the court for leniency. The district attorney here, Gascon, said he did not express remorse. That's clearly a remorseful statement. Well, maybe it's more remorse about his own life than it is about the shooting of Megan. But I just wonder why. We've seen sentences like this before for those in the hip hop industry. Why don't these sentences deter people? He obviously is like distraught to say, "Please don't ruin my life. I could be your son. I could be your brother." He got 76 letters from, he was fighting this. He changed his lawyers multiple times. He delayed the sentencing. This was not someone who, was trying to, act with bravado like he was ready to go serve his time, and that would be on his next record. He was acting like a scared person who did not want to step foot in jail serving this kind of time, and he was doing everything in his power. He tried to pay him off. He tried to silence them. He used the legal process. So I'm just sitting here thinking, like, dude, like, where's the deterrent factor? Why aren't folks, and this is bigger than just rap artists, because all kinds of criminals, you'd ask the same question, but in this community in particular, since that's what we're talking about, why don't you think these sentences deter these artists from getting in this kind of criminal, hot water?
I think there are a lot of issues at play. We could talk about macro. We could talk about too many guns in our society, right? We could start. We could start with that. We could also listen. Areva, we talk about me from Philly. I grew up listening to hip hop. Remember, it was rap music, so I consider myself someone who loves hip hop from day one. But let's be clear about the bravado from hip hop artists, particularly Black males. It is. Sometimes the bravado is a show, but sometimes in this situation it wasn't. And as my colleague Dr. Smiley highlighted, he does have a history of violence. So at some point, some of the other violent acts he had committed, he needed to pause, reflect, and do better. And he didn't. And look, like me, I've had a number of family and friends who've known who served, who've been incarcerated, and then become returning citizens. But let's be clear, he shot her. He then wrote a song through social media and blogs, as we described, criticized her. And we have to center this in Megan, when it comes to Megan, as a victim. And so when you victimize Black women, there should be a penalty to pay.
And I'll just jump in real quick. I think to Dr. Walker's point, that's the thing, right? Is that Tory was really banking on the fact that it was a Black woman that he shot, that it would reduce his time, right? If he had shot Taylor Swift, right, versus Megan Thee Stallion,
30.
right? There's the kind of optics of difference here, right? He was very much banking on this idea that knowing whether explicitly, implicitly, someone told him that if he does all these other things, because for me that was really the really kind of knife in the kind of wound, was like, dude, what are you doing? Like, and so I think that's another really key point.
Yeah, that is very important. And again, that goes to how devalued Black women are, even in Black community, how we are devalued even by Black men. And I think that's what Megan has been saying over and over again through this process is everybody expected me not to, quote unquote, snitch on the Black guy and just move on with the trauma of having been shot and publicly humiliated, because as Black women, we don't feel pain in the same way that other people do. And we're supposed to be impervious in some ways to pain. And we're supposed to, at all costs, protect our man and just move on. So no happy ending to this. As you said, originally, Dr. Smiley, Tory Lanez' son's life will forever be impacted. Tony has got to go sit down in a jail cell and reflect and figure out his anger issues. And hopefully Megan and the hip hop community can rally around her and show her the kind of love and support that she deserves for having the courage to come forward. But no winners in this situation. And hopefully the hip hop community, takes note of what happened and realizes that this bravado can have really serious consequences associated with it. We can't end this show today without talking about our favorite politician and his woes. When we come forward, more of Areva Martin in real time right here on KBLA Talk 1580.
If you're not listening to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings on KBLA Talk 1580, you're missing out. Everybody wants to talk to Tavis.
That's one reason, by the way, why I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you today. The three people I always most hoped would interview me were Phil Donahue, Studs Terkel, and Tavis Smiley. Donahue's retired, Terkel's deceased, so this is a real thrill for me. And the reason why I have such respect for what you do is you have a historically informed conversation of depth and detail.
Be sure to tune in to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings, 9 a.m. to 12 noon on your unapologetically progressive radio station, KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580.
Is the pen mightier than the sword?
They say the pen is mightier than the sword. At KBLA Talk 1580, we not only have a lot to talk about, we have a lot to write about. Politics, relationships, business, empowerment, and culture. The all-star roster at KBLA Talk 1580 has you covered.
That's what it's all about.
Be sure to follow us on all our socials for our latest book releases, op-eds, essays, and commentaries from our hosts. And, of course, download the KBLA 1580 app as we strive to remain your most trusted, credible, and reliable source for the issues you care about. This is unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
What up, baby?
I'm young, gifted, and black. At KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
Hey there, I'm Jared Hill, president of the National Association of Black Journalists of Los Angeles, and I just want to say thank you for the benevolent $10,000 donation and scholarships for the next generation of black journalists.
And I'm Haywood Galbraith, photojournalist and founder of the Minority Photojournalism Institute. Thanks, KBLA, for your generous $10,000 scholarship gift to help us train the next generation of black photojournalists.
Congratulations to all the students who will benefit from the scholarship dollars raised at our Black History Month luncheon, honoring black legends in LA media. When we come forward at KBLA Talk 1580, we're bringing everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us.
Access granted.
In a survey conducted by the public opinion research firm Eviderus, KBLA Talk 1580 consistently emerged as the station of choice for black audiences in the Los Angeles media market and beyond. The survey also revealed that the vast majority of black audiences are concerned about the lack of black-owned media and are more likely to listen to talk radio that focuses on issues that impact the black community. For some reason, the other talk stations haven't quite figured that out.
If you think about KFI, well, KFI only has like a 3% black listenership. 3%. So there's a good 97% out there to support a station like KBLA.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black. Your black. Your black.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
Be sure to follow us on.
Okay, Dr. Smiley, we cannot talk about trending news without, of course, talking about Donald Trump, who, is dominating the news cycles pretty much every day, not only with the indictments that he is facing and the fourth one, news that the fourth one is likely to come next week. But the story that really caught my eye today about Donald Trump was his post on social media after the U.S. women's national soccer team lost to Sweden. So here's the guy that wants to be president of this country, is cheering and gleefully expressing his joy over a U.S. team losing in a competition against another country and saying the USA is going to hell. Then why do you want to be the president if we're going to hell? It's just mind-boggling. What is wrong with this dude?
Yeah, well, as my friend just said to me, that's our former and potentially our future president saying this. And, and it goes back to the soccer, when the women lost the other day, the first thing another friend of mine put right into our group chat was, watch the Republicans blame this loss on wokeism. And, that's the playbook of Republicans. But, what's really fascinating to me is that the Republicans have really branded themselves of the party of free speech and all of these types of, only in our America can you do what you want. But yet the moment that you do something that they don't want, they want to, stomp you out. And it is just so, petty and ridiculous to see a former president or anyone who has represented the U.S. Laugh or make fun of the women, the national team losing. But it also, I think, has to do with a topic we were just talking about. There's a gendered difference here, right? Would Donald Trump have said the same thing or gone off on the same way if this was the men's team? Maybe, possibly. But, we can't ignore that there's clearly a gender, a sexual orientation, and race issue when it comes to the women's national team. And this is a team that's been outspoken for a number of years, whether that's about equal pay, whether it's about social issues, Black Lives Matter, the Me Too movement. So, it's kind of like they've become the Republican punching bag, and to see them lose in some way has this weird, perverse make America great thing that he constantly talks about, right? Which we know is the dog whistle for get the women back in the kitchen, not on the field.
Yeah, and Dr. Walker, anybody that says anything against the Republicans, they want to get rid of. So they want to get rid of the Justice Department, get rid of the FBI, I presume get rid of the U.S. soccer team. And even your Governor DeSantis has gotten in on this things they hate about America, including the comment he made about swampy D.C. Donald Trump loves to throw darts and talk negatively about cities where there are large Black populations. So whether it's Chicago or now D.C., he likes to talk about how broken they are and how under his administration somehow these cities were made great again. But isn't one of the jobs of the president being a cheerleader for the country, standing up for the good old red, white, and blue, and championing the causes, and particularly in sporting events? I just don't understand how it is that people, the MAGA crowd, supports the guy that hates America and hates Washington, D.C., and hates so many of the institutions. He attacks the military. He attacks, our school system. All of these institutions that Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, and the Republican Party attack. Why do you want to be the president? Why does Ron DeSantis want to be the president?
Listen, Areva, a lot of us is centered in white supremacy. You can keep it as simple as possible. And any institution, individuals that are in the way of maintaining a racial hierarchy system are going to be problem for those individuals you highlighted. It is that simple. And there's in terms of the issue, particularly Donald Trump, obviously, he wants to stay out of jail, right? We know that. Right. But his presidency centered within white supremacy. The Republican Party, whether it's Tim Scott or others, they're talking about upholding a system that that has historically not allowed Black folks to have power, political, economical, social capital. So let's just be clear about what this really all about. And that's essentially what it's about. And if you listen to them, first of all, the policy DeSantis has supported. And what Trump has said when he was doing his presidency, and since then, like when you talk about Washington, D.C., I'm a former Washingtonian. He's making it clear. Like it's explicit. He's talking about, look at all the crazy shit in D.C. with all these Black folks.
Yeah.
Look, if you've been to D.C. recently, it's been gentrified. First of all, it's not Chocolate City anymore. It's like Mocha City. I was in D.C. just like a couple weeks ago. So, but it's condos. It's $600,000-$700,000 condos all over the place. So what is he talking about?
Well, wherever he sees, more than 2 or 3 Black people, it's going to pot, it's going to hell, et cetera. So before we get out of here, I got to ask you, Dr. Smiley, in hour 2, we're going to deal extensively with the gang attack by this white mob on this Black captain of a boat in Montgomery. But give us real quickly the history of Montgomery and why this story is resonating so with Black folks.
Yeah, I mean, as you read at the beginning of the hour, Areva, right? Montgomery has a very infamous past in terms of during the antebellum era of slavery, but we also know it as a kind of a really important piece of the civil rights movement with the Montgomery bus boycotts, right? That is where we've all learned the name Rosa Parks. It's what catapulted Dr. King into the position that he was in. And so just because the civil rights movement era is over doesn't mean that everything is all good. In fact, as many of us have experienced, we've all experienced racism. We've all seen it witnessed firsthand. And I'm sure that many of those Black folks, and you have to remember, some of those Black folks that were in that video seem to be of a certain age that either were born during, children of the civil rights era, or were maybe even small children themselves during civil rights. So I'm sure some of them either knew very firsthand or heard the very direct stories about what it was like living through Jim Crow. And so, and Black folks have always had other Black folks back. This is not the first time that we've all come together. But that man was beaten for doing his job. That's number one, right? And so that should be why those individuals need to be held responsible and accountable, both legally and prosecuted for what they did. But also the social component of it is that, we're not going to leave another brother or sister behind. And that, I think, needs to be part of the headline in conjunction with, yes, we have the Tory Lanez, yeah, but we also have the brothers with the white folding chairs too, right? And so we can, as you said earlier, walk and chew gum. So we are going to defend ourselves against any sort of violent attack.
Well, with that, we are out of time. Thank you. You put that very well, though, and that will lead us into hour two, where we'll be talking to Mayor Quentin Lucas from Kansas City and a criminal defense attorney about the criminal charges that these attackers are likely to face. Thank you so much, Dr. Larry Walker, Dr. Calvin John Smiley. Always a pleasure to have both of you on the show. Always a lot smarter when I spend time with both of you. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580. When we come forward, we're going to talk about in detail what some are calling the Montgomery Riverfront uprising right here on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is a rather bold pronouncement, but we think we can back it up. If you come across a radio frequency anywhere putting more variety and more diversity on the air than KBLA Talk 1580, we sure would like to hear about your discovery.
You got to have vision.
You can search. We are confident that you won't find more shows